Welcome back. So we're going to pause with a very ancient prayer. I'm not sure how old it is, but it's probably one of the oldest prayers that dates back to the very early church. It's called the Trisagion. Holy God, holy and mighty, holy, immortal one, have mercy upon us. Let's pause and connect our hearts with the presence of God, this Holy One. We open our hearts to you again today, Lord. We invite your word to come and to make us whole. Lead us into life, lead us into truth. Amen. So today we're looking at John 1, and we're looking at the second half of verse 14, which says this: We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. I think there's a few kind of churchy kind of words in there: glory, grace, truth. What do they all mean? So we'll just spend a little bit of time thinking about that. So the glory of God is really his character on display. And I've probably thought about God's glory, about his magnificence, his splendor, his awe, words like that. And it's only really this year that I've honed in on other aspects of God's glory, where his character is on display. And really you get a glimpse of it right here in this verse, where it talks about the Son who came from the Father. So that very sense of him emptying himself and setting aside his deity and becoming a person, a human, just like us. That is his glory. That is his character on display. That's self-emptying in order that we can be filled up. We have seen his glory. Let's think about the little phrase, grace and truth. There's so much packed in there. And it's interesting that many religions would actually divide themselves down these lines. So they would either be religions that are full of grace, or they'd be religions that are full of truth. So they'd either be incredibly kind, so looking to acknowledge the goodness of humankind already. And if we find ourselves, then we find that goodness that's inside. And they focus very strongly on the grace side of being kind to humans. And then there's many religions, of course, that would err on the side of truth. So they would have a very strong list of these are the things that you must do. And if you do all these things, then you find goodness. And of course, in this verse here, we find Jesus described as being one who is full of grace and truth. So instead of choosing one or the other, he blends the two in his character. We'll come back to think about that a little bit more. It's not just world religions that divide themselves along these lines of grace or truth, but as human beings ourselves, we probably gravitate towards one or the other. So we're probably going to be either very, very tolerant, almost to the extent where there aren't any rules really, and we're just kind and we're just amiable people. Or we err on the other side, and maybe there's more in this one, that actually we have a very clear set of what's expected, and if people achieve those things, then that's good and we'll accept them. And if they don't, we're not so kind to them. And we can gravitate one way or the other, grace or truth, as individuals. I wonder which side you gravitate to. I think I might change. A great example of Jesus' extraordinary ability to balance grace and truth can be found in John chapter 8, where the Pharisees, who were all about truth and a very clear set of rules that you had to live by, presented Jesus with a woman who had been caught in adultery. And they said to Jesus, the law is very clear. The law says that this woman must be stoned. What do you say? So Jesus was presented with a difficult situation. The law was super clear. What would he do? And being full of grace and truth, Jesus demonstrates what that actually looks like. So he turns back to the accusers and he says to them, if you are without sin, you cast the first stone. And of course, one by one, all of the accusers walk away. They know full well that they are not without sin, and that none of them really had the right to pick up that stone and throw it, because they were accusing themselves as they did that, really. And as everybody had left, Jesus turns to the woman and he says, really comforting words, neither do I accuse you, or neither do I condemn you. Then he also says to her, now go and leave your life of sin. So we see this incredible example, even in that interaction that he eventually has with the woman. After he's dealt with the accusers, he turns to her and he says, I don't condemn you. He's full of grace. Now leave your life of sin. He's full of truth. I think our world is becoming more divided and more divisive, actually. We desperately need, in this divisive world, people who are Christ-like, who can balance grace and truth. Kind and tolerant, yet also with a very clear sense of what brings life. Clear about truth, yet also full of grace. Let's pause for a moment of contemplation around these thoughts. Two questions to consider. Do I need to add grace or truth to balance my natural tendencies? And secondly, how do I feel about self-emptying? Let's pause for a minute. Lord, thank you that you were willing to empty yourself in order that we could be filled up with life. Please help us to become more like you in every situation we find ourselves in life, that we will also be full of grace and truth. Amen. See you tomorrow.